Is the 2008 film Avatar racist? When the film Avatar was released back in 2008, there were reviews of it posted onto YouTube. Some of those reviews dismissed the film as a copy, while other reviews accused the film of being racist. In pursuing the question whether the film is racist, I am relying exclusively on the details of the film provided by the reviewers that accuse it of being racist. My sole intent is to examine the conclusions reached by these reviewers. And for this reason, I've never watched the film Avatar. I've done zero research on it. Let me quickly go over the details of the film provided by those reviewers. There is a blue-skinned group of aliens called the Na'vi who inhabit a planet with a resource called the unobtainium. There is a corporation willing to expend an unlimited amount of resources to obtain the unobtainium, which the Na'vi do not wish to give up. The corporation develops a plan to convince the Na'vi to give up the unobtainium. The plan is to create an avatar, send this avatar over to the Na'vi, where it is to blend in, gain acceptance, and convince the Na'vi to give up the land and the resource. The story focuses on one avatar named Jake, who gets a chance to become an avatar because a previous avatar malfunctioned. Jake begins learning from the Na'vi. He seems to excel at being a Na'vi. He defeats in battle the Na'vi that is next in line to be the leader of the Na'vi, and he manages to gain the blessing of an ancient Na'vi god that the Na'vi themselves can no longer communicate with. At one point, the corporation loses its patience and launches an assault, and Jake leads the Na'vi and repels that assault. Now, the YouTube reviews fall into two categories. On the one side, we have the reviews that dismiss the film Avatar as a copy. These reviewers said that the film Avatar is a remake of the film Fern Gully and/or Dances with Wolves. Matt Walsh refers to the Avatar as a rehash. Nearly all of the reviews of Avatar that called it a copy tended to be by white reviewers. On the other side, there are the reviews which conclude that the film Avatar is racist, and these reviewers tended to be black, but were not exclusively black. It is a metaphysical gesture to call something a copy and dismiss it because it is a copy. The copy, the imitation, the repetition, the repeat, is devalued. It has no value. It is cast out. It is cast down. It is a waste of time. In many of his essays, Derrida is often engaged in the deconstruction of the metaphysical opposition between the original and the copy, often demonstrating that the copy has a unique and distinct identity of its own. For this reason, there's no reason to keep in focus any of the reviews that dismiss the film Avatar as a copy. In demonstrating that the film Avatar has its own unique and distinct identity, the entire commentary will be commentary on the reviews that have dismissed the film as a copy. When it comes to the reviews that accuse the film of being racist, these reviewers rest their argument on the idea that the Na'vi represent black people. And this is taken for granted. It's so obvious it doesn't need to be commented upon, examined, or re-examined. The Na'vi represent black people. Black people are represented by the Na'vi. None of these reviewers will take the time to discuss the logic, issues, and implications of this representation. For decades now, the group of people known as black leaders have told us that black people need to see people that look like them, that black people cannot relate to or identify with white people because the white people have a different skin color. Black people need to see people that look like them, people with the same skin color, people they can identify with for all sorts of reasons. For example, to be able to understand anything in general, to be able to learn in school, to understand that they're not being taken advantage of, and recently, it's even important when they're surrounded by fire and in need of rescue. One of the names that this has been given is representation. Blacks need representation. The reviewers that accused the film Avatar of being racist based their accusation on the idea that the Na'vi represent black people. However, the Na'vi are a totally different skin color. The Na'vi skin color is blue, and the color blue is not the color black. Black people see themselves in the Na'vi. They relate to the Na'vi. They identify with the Na'vi, despite the fact that the Na'vi have a totally different skin color and appearance. Is this possible? Is it possible for black people to relate to, identify with, see themselves in, be represented by a group of people who have a completely different skin color and are completely different in appearance? It must be. If the film Avatar is racist, it must be possible for black people to identify with anyone, regardless of skin color or appearance. One of the reviewers, the angry black man, in the least articulate, least detailed, but most illuminating review, wants to demonstrate a stronger connection between the Na'vi and black people by pointing out that not only are all of the actors that portray the Na'vi black, but that also all of the actors that portray the corporation are white. But doesn't this suggest that James Cameron has consciously structured the film in this way? Having all white actors portray the corporation while having all black actors portray the Na'vi? Which would mean that James Cameron is consciously criticizing the idea of representation. The fact that all the Na'vi are being portrayed by black actors demonstrates the falseness and absurdity of the idea of representation. It demonstrates that black people have absolutely no problem relating to, identifying with, seeing themselves in, representing, or being represented by a group of people with completely different skin color and appearance. Of course, we cannot fail to point out that the Na'vi are a fictional group of people, which means that the appearance can be infinitely varied. Black people would still see themselves in, relate to, identify with other human beings, other sentient beings. What we have been told about black people needing representation is unscientific, unphilosophic nonsense. From the moment there is recognition of a being in a role that they could play, possessing an object they could possess, doing something they could do, there is identification. Recognizing another being as the same as the self, but different, is identification. The people who accuse the film Avatar of being racist assure us that despite the Na'vi having a completely different skin color and appearance, the Na'vi represent black people. But what if the blue doesn't represent the black? What if the blue represents the white? And what if the white represents the black? What if the Na'vi represent white people and the militarized corporation represents black people? From this perspective, the story appears totally different, but at the same time, the story appears so very, very familiar. It's a story we've lived with for more than 100 years now. The talented 10th. If only we could get a talented 10th of black people accepted into white society, they could turn around and uplift the rest of the black community. Talented 10th and all its permutations, all its rebrands over the years. Join the system and change the system. If a black person had this job, this job, this job, that job, that job, and that job, then things would change. Then things would improve. Affirmative action, positive image, positive role model, representation. the avatar. If only we could get an avatar accepted into white society, that avatar could bring back the unobtainium to the rest of the black community. Avatarism, the idea that by giving a black person who is unqualified, unmotivated, and incompetent a position they did not or could not earn, it will somehow magically improve the overall condition of the rest of the black community. Just as in the film, once the avatar has joined the Na'vi, once the avatar has joined white society, the avatar becomes enamored with white society. The thought of returning to black society with the unobtainium fills the avatar with a fierceness that even the Na'vi, the white people, are no match for. Just as in the film, the avatar reaps nothing but destruction upon the black community. The only time the avatar takes notice of black people, it is to reinforce their worthlessness. Ghetto, ratchet, fatiguer, the problem. The film Avatar is saying that the avatar doesn't work. The avatar has never worked. The reviews which accuse the film of being racist tended to avoid direct examination or confrontation with the film's themes and metaphors. And this is all the more conspicuous when you realize that one of the film's metaphors is flashing like a gigantic neon sign demanding your attention. The unobtainium. It is a metaphor that is central to the movie's theme, and yet its name seems like an afterthought, as though James Cameron were 100% drunk, half asleep, and desperately trying to escape the boardroom and get to the bathroom when they asked him what the resource thereafter is named. The unobtainium is the metaphor that desperately wants you to consider its metaphoricity. What is the unobtainium? As a metaphor, what is the unobtainium standing in for? What is it that blacks are trying to obtain from whites, which requires the use of an avatar, a talented tenth, but which they have been unable to obtain for more than 100 years? Rather than asking the question, what is the unobtainium, it would be more instructive if we ask the question, who is the unobtainium for? Now, keep in mind that I have never seen the film, and the reviewers whose information I am relying on are not interested in recognizing the identity of the film. They're not interested in following its thread, its themes, and metaphors. They dismiss it as a copy or convicted of being racist after the flimsiest of trials. So I can only wonder and speculate about my next question. Did Jake obtain the unobtainium? Was there one of those classic cheesy film moments after their victory where Jake is surrounded by all of his new Na'vi friends and Jake is looking around brimming with satisfaction and accomplishment, and the expression on his face seems to say, the real unobtainium were the friends we made along the way? If there were such a classic cheesy moment in the film, in which the film equates Jake's life, his existence among the Na'vi, as the unobtainium itself, this would mean that the avatar does not work, it has never worked, and it cannot work, because the unobtainium is not something that can be physically acquired, transmitted, or even communicated. If something like the unobtainium exists, then it is a mode of existence that is realizable, can only be realized by each and every human being. But what about the people who have been taught talented tenth, representation, join the system and change the system? If a black person has this job, that job, and that job, then things would change, then things would improve. Affirmative action, positive role model, positive image. What about the people who have been taught to believe in the avatar? What do they think is happening? Remember the Avatar episode of the television show The Jeffersons? This would have been around 1975 or so. In this episode, George Jefferson meets an old friend. And this old friend is attempting to get as much stuff from George as he can because George Jefferson has made it. He's affluent. The friend is portrayed as a blackmailer. The lesson that George, and therefore the viewer, has to learn is that the friend is just trying to get over. He's just using him. And George has to man up and put a stop to it, which, of course, he does. Throughout the episode, the old friend has been calling George brother. At the end of the episode, after George has put the old friend in his place, George adds the statement, "I am not your brother." And this is very significant for both the story and in terms of what's going on in black culture at the time. Story-wise, George isn't even attempting to correct bad behavior, which is what sitcoms were all about. George is destroying the old friend, and at the same time, his connection to black culture. This episode of The Jeffersons is a poorly written version of The Avatar. The old friend discovers that the Avatar, George, has access to the unobtainium, and he tries to get the Avatar to give him the unobtainium. The old friend doesn't know what the unobtainium is. But the Avatar must learn that he must destroy the old friend instead, which he does. And the lesson of the episode is the logic of the Avatar. It's crystal clear. Despite being taught talented 10th, affirmative action, representation, etc., the Avatar owes nothing to the black community. The Avatar has no duty or responsibility to the black community. And of course, the black community has no right to demand or expect anything from the Avatar. This is a pretty typical experience for black people. The talented 10th, the representation, the Avatar, treats black people far worse than the Na'vi, the white people, ever did. Recently, Congressman Byron Donalds said something similar. He said that under Jim Crow, the black family was better off. And of course, it had nothing to do with Jim Crow, right? When white people had control, political and cultural control of all of America, the black community was doing much better off despite the presence of Jim Crow. It is only when the black leaders gain political and cultural control of the black community that the black community begins to suffer in earnest. Let me try to conclude this here. The talented 10th, as an idea created by a black man, stands in stark contrast to the Declaration of Independence. The core values of America declare that all men are created equal, and all men, 100% of men, have an unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The talented 10th, as an idea, says that only 10% of blacks are worthy of participating in American society. Only 10% of blacks have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. At best, talented 10th representation is a compromise with Jim Crow, with segregated America. As such, it forestalls 100% black participation in human and American society. In truth, talented 10th representation is just the political economic agenda of an elite social group, trying to pass itself off as based on nature, racial nature, the souls of black folks. Black folk need representation. Talented 10th representation does not, never has, because it cannot perform the function they claim it performs when they sell this idea to you. Uplift the black community, change things for the better for the black community. Representation forestalls participation in human society. Representation teaches black children that they have to wait before you grow, wait before you develop as spiritual, intellectual beings, Wait for someone else to become successful before you become successful. Wait for someone to role model life for you. There is no mystery when it comes to what is ailing black children today. It is all the garbage, all the absolute garbage that the black leaders are teaching them.